This video contains discussion of harm of children and self-harm and the experience of those who have lived through it. Please proceed with care. Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Jackson, licensed professional counselor, and welcome to my channel. Today we are reviewing Couples Therapy, episode 402, which is the 4th season, 2nd episode. Here at this channel, we do a different type of review. We do a different type of therapeutic review where we get a little curious. We get to wonder and sit and ask ourselves some questions about what could really be happening inside of these couples. Why are they showing up in this way? What are they needing? What are they wanting throughout the sessions that they're having as they're trying to build or rebuild their relationships or learn a different way of being that works best for them? And why do we lean into our curiosity? Well, it helps. It helps us to learn a little bit about relationships, and it also can potentially help us learn a little bit about ourselves. If you are returning, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. First, we have our polyamorous couple coming back, and they're in the thick of things. This is Josh, Aaron, and Lorena, and they have two different spans of relationships, and we learn a little bit more too about the makeup of their relationship. So Josh and Aaron have been together for 8 years, and Josh and Lorena have been together for 2 years. Josh lives, because a therapist, Orna, she talks about it after the session with her clinical supervisor, that Josh lives with a group of people. And Lorena lives by herself, and seems like Josh maybe comes there to visit her. And then when Aaron comes in, it seems like she visits, is what I'm presuming, she visits with the space, or in the space, the collective space that Josh lives in. And they all have interactions and engage with other people outside of their relationship that they're having with each other. And Lorena and Aaron are not in partnership with each other. So that is the makeup of this unit. And what I know from watching, because I've watched all 4 seasons of this show, what I know about Orna is that she is working through. She has a bias that she named last season of feeling that polyamorous relationships don't work. And I think she said that in there's a group consultation that she was with other therapists. She was like, I've never seen it work. So I see that she's taking on this couple and trying to work through that bias, which is a beautiful thing. She's leaning into her curiosity, and she's saying, okay, I'm trying to understand what are the needs, what are they wanting to do, and how to work their unit. Like, what does that look like for them, and how can I best help them through that, and in navigating this structure of relationship that they're navigating and still kind of learning themselves even in this episode. So Erin starts off saying that she has changed her schedule because she had been hearing from Josh that he wants more time, more connection with her. And so she had made some readjustments to her schedule, and it caused a lot of distress. The word she used was tumultuous. So there was a part of her that was like, I don't understand why I wasn't welcomed. It was kind of actually very hurtful that I wasn't welcomed. And Erin said that she assumed because Josh said that he would want more time, that he and that he was yearning for that because she was in Las Vegas and she was coming back. And Josh said that the conversation was more of a logistical nature. It was a logistical conversation, not of how the impact of logistics would impact him. Which I had to slow my system down because I was getting activated around this. But I'm hearing Josh. So from Josh's view, he was wanting more of a conversation about how these logistics as a unit would impact them. That did not occur. So Erin comes home and she has this hurt of hey, why wasn't I immediately welcomed home, and confused because he had asked for this. He said he wanted more time. He explicitly said that, so she made it happen. And so they're both having this conversation. I'm not for sure of what Josh's hurt is around. That is what I'm really curious about. That really isn't explicitly clear to me, because Orna stated that the therapist, that they're both talking about two different hurts. What hurt me and what hurt me. Okay? I'm hearing Aaron's hurt really clearly. I thought you wanted me to be home. I made the arrangements for me to be home. And then that wasn't welcome. There was like a, what are you doing? Like kind of response. And maybe what I'm hearing from Josh is the response of, oh, you came home and what did you expect? And like her expectation, how that landed on him hurt him. Okay? So that's what I'm sensing, but it's really not that crystal clear to me what's hurting Josh, and I don't even know if he is that clear about what hurt him. And so I think maybe too that's what Josh is getting into when he starts to kind of have this kind of buck a little bit. There's a part of him that's like wanting to, like we need to have the conversation and start at the beginning. And Orna's like, hey, yeah, we can, but you're both talking about two different things. And Josh is like, but if we don't start at the beginning, then how do we not know where it happened, right? Like where the wounding happened and what led to it. Like I feel like that's where Josh is going. And I hear him. I also hear the therapist too, because what she's naming is that when it gets into a place, especially in couples therapy, when it's like, who was wrong, that conversation is never going to be fruitful. Like, it's never going to go good. And so she's saying, yeah, that works in the court case, in the court of law. We're not there, and so let's talk about how how to make things better. Let's attend to the hurt, and I feel like this was Josh's way of trying to attend to the hurt. Like we know we need to go back to the beginning because that's where this started. So then you see Josh say, "Oof, like that's really hard for me." And then you see the two women, Aaron and Lauren, they look at each other and they kind of smile like, "Ooh, we know this. We know this behavior." That's what I saw, like them like, "Ooh, yeah, we know this." And then Lorena kind of looks over to the corner, to the edge with a glossy eye. So like I told you last week, nonverbal communication, there's so much. One, there's a glossy eye. To me, that means there's some emotions that she's trying to numb and manage in the moment that aren't being expressed in the now. And she looks over to say, like, I wonder what those eyes are saying. It's almost like, here we go, or it could be like, this is where I'm not going to be heard. This something is happening internally for Lorena where she's looking to the side, like something's there, and I'm wondering what is there that needs to be attended to. But and so Josh states that I'm the one that's most clear about the emotional range that I'm experiencing, and 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 he gets why it's not the case for women in the United States. And so Orna kind of stops him and says, well, you're getting really like global and abstract. Can we bring it back to like where we are? I I want to hear more actually about this. One, I feel like it's connected to a past pain that maybe like his experiences of women not understanding him, but also still want to know what he means by his emotional range. I feel like those words were like an interesting choice. And so I want to know more about what he's saying when he says that, because it wasn't like I'm really clear about my pain. Like I really feel like both of both of these women are communicating for the most part, like pretty vulnerably. There's still some protection, like we see Lorena looking to the side. Aaron was pretty like very upfront, like, hey, this is what hurt me. It's still not really clear for me about where Josh's hurt is, and it feels like there's a lot of protection around what's hurting him in this unit, in this relationship. And so, whether it's one that lectures about the women in the United States and his experience, or one that like comes from a more like analytical place of like, we talked about logistics, but we didn't talk about the impact, right? Like, what's here, what's happening right now that that's needing protection. Like, that's what I'm really curious about, because it's so not clear to me about what Josh is really talking about in his experience with navigating this relationship. So Orna, she kind of slows it down and she's like, all right. She checks in with Lorena, which I feel, her body language was really saying that she was holding something. And at the same time, I feel like we still don't know. I feel like we still don't know what's happening with Josh. So I feel like Orna is trying to like manage the protection in the room. Like, she's trying to manage Josh's like analytical, like theorizing parts of him that are coming up, because they were starting to cause harm, really. Like, the women looked at each other like, oh, this is where we get dismissed, and he starts lecturing about his emotional range, right? I don't know. That may be how he shows up in conflict. And I also see that we did not get to the source of the pain. Like, we didn't get to why this protection is here. And so Lorena said, she's getting to the space where her only point of reference in this relationship is she's the one who is with Josh majority of the time because Aaron is away. Like, that's when she came into this relationship. And so now she's like having to adjust, and she's like, it's kind of bumpy. It's been really bumpy having to adjust because from Josh's view, like, this was not discussed. And so Josh said, well, yeah, you're usually like really accommodating, which I appreciate. And Lorena was like, yeah, but there was a situation that happened a couple weeks ago. And she named like they were supposed to go to breakfast. They were scheduled, and she was like waiting to hear back from him. And then, like, very short notice, she got a reach out from Josh that, hey, oh yeah, I'm with Aaron right now. I won't be there until this such time. And so like she had to adjust her schedule like 20 30 minutes, and she didn't know. And it was like very short notice, and she was like, now, okay, so is this what it's going to be like? Am I going to be the secondary partner now? And so Josh is like, oh yeah, I get it. And no, Lorena's like, no, do you really get it though? Like, do you really understand what it is? Because it's less about time. And Josh is like, no, like, yes, I do get it. Absolutely. You don't want to be seen as the like secondary partner that's like pushed to the side with like little consent. Like, even if the time isn't big, like the fact that the act of you being pushed to the side with little consent, she said, yes, no consent. And I feel like that is the piece that's really alarming to Lorena, that there's not a choice. When we are robbed of choice, it really can communicate a lot to our nervous system about our value and how someone is valuing us. And so, and especially if that has been past experiences, we know that Lorena had a really bad relationship and a breakup, and she was just like tiptoeing back into relationships. And so this is her like first big one, and this has been 2 years that she's been with Josh. And so now they're in a place where they are exploring titles and the language and the meaning of the titles, because Aaron was using anchor partner with Josh, and they never really had a discussion, Aaron said, to like her just disappointment almost. Like, she's like, oh man, I thought it was one thing and you maybe thought it was something else. And they're discussing, like, what does this anchor partner mean? What does this mean to us? And kind of, are we playing into a system that we're trying not to play into? They use this language, relationship anarchy and hierarchy of, like, oh, there's an anchor partner, there's a primary partner, there's a secondary partner. And so Aaron was like, we're in the midst of having this conversation, and Lorena, are you aware of this? And she's like, yeah, I thought this was already happening. And so they're kind of like wondering what the culture of their relationship as a unit. It feels like right now what they're needing is more communications, and I'm wondering if there's safety around speaking for their needs in their unit with each other. That's what I'm sensing. Like, Lorena's like, yeah, I need to know. I need to know, and I need you to respect my time. Like, I need you to value my time and my space. If we said that we were doing something, then we said we were going to do something. And if Aaron is popping in, then you need to have a conversation of, like, I've made this commitment with Lorena. I would love to still spend time with you. Can we do this for lunch or dinner? Like, where Lorena is not feeling pushed to the side, where Aaron is still feeling like she's being valued in the relationship. And Josh is still unclear to me. It's still unclear to me about what his wants and needs are in this relationship. And other than the want and need for clear communication. But even then, that still, it feels like it's protective. Like, I need this clear communication to protect me from what? I'm really not clear about what Josh is needing this clear communication for exactly. What is he trying to protect? What is he really looking for? Next, we have Eliana and Mitch. And I'm going to try to say her name the right way, because I realized when I was editing the last video that I was calling her Elena, which is not her name, it's Eliana. Okay, I want to honor her and say her right name. So they're starting off in the lobby, and she said that she left her list of things that she wanted to talk about, and they kind of joke. Mitch is like, oh, because you want to tell Orna about how bad I'm doing. And so this kind of really, to this playful way that they're talking about the reason why they're at therapy, it lets us know that, like, how safe they are talking about it, because there's this like playful, like, haha, like, we got to make it light, and they're joking. He called her a snitch, so, like, there's a lot of playful humor to kind of lighten the heaviness of it. So I wonder if they're even allowing themselves to sit in the heaviness of where their relationship is, or if they're even aware of it. Eliana says that she has to explain and remind and reiterate things that need to get done, and if she doesn't do that, then they fall on her. And she's frustrated around this. And so Mitch said, yeah, there's some ways that I'm falling short in this relationship. And so Orna's like, yeah, tell me more about this. He's like, well, anticipating needs. And she's like, oh, Eliana's needs. She said, yeah, so, like, what needs are you not attending to? He's like, well, recognizing when the garbage needs to be taken out. And so that was a very interesting observation for Orna to say, like, oh, the garbage being taken out is Eliana's needs. And he said, well, yeah, because it's not my home. I don't feel a part of this home. And then Orna brings it, like, big picture, like, oh, which kind of brings it to the dynamic here of this, why we are here. Eliana generates the needs, and then we are here constantly deciding. There's this part of her that's like, did you do it or did you not do it? Listen to this. So I wonder if there has been any other times previously in Eliana's life, and I'm gonna even venture out and say I'm sure there has been, but I'm wondering if that's why this protection or this impact of him not showing up in this way is frustrating to her. We know that she's feeling the pressure. They have a lot riding on this. That's what she named. But then also too, I'm wondering if her having to advocate for her needs to be met is something that she's had to navigate or had to deal with in relationships, in her partnerships, or even in her familial relationships. But we didn't get there. But just naming that, both of them were like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Yeah, Eliana's like, "Yeah, I never thought of it that way," and so you naming that, yeah, that makes sense. And so then Mitch is like, "Yeah," and I'm very fatigued and frustrated with the comparison of how she does it versus how I do it, and how her way is better than how I'm doing it. And so Eliana uses the example of brushing teeth. So she's like, I brush my teeth twice a day. And so I had to like kind of understand. I'm like, Mitch doesn't know how to brush his teeth, but that's not what she was saying. She's talking about the baby, like how to keep their eye on the baby. He's a toddler, he's a cute little something. And how to keep him busy while they're doing the things. Because toddlers, you take your eye off of them 1 minute, one night, 1 minute, 1 second, and who knows what could occur. So he, she's like, I have to explain what he needs to do or to keep him occupied while he brushes his teeth when I do that twice a day. Why can't you do that? Like, why can't you do that? And so then Mitch starts to get activated around this. Like, see, here's a comparison. And he's like, I don't know. I'm not here. I don't know what she's able to do to make sure that to keep the baby safe. Like, he doesn't know how to do that. And so that's why he asked. And then the way she communicates to him is out of like condescension and frustration and tone. And so then Eliana's like, I understand. And then there's like laughter. And so then Orna, the therapist, is like, do, do you understand? Like, what do you understand? Tell me. She's like, okay, I understand highlighting, and then there's more laughter. So, like, there's this, it feels like humor is definitely a way of, like, masking some things. And I wonder if, like, what this could be like for Eliana to sit with a vulnerable feeling. Mitch is black, African American man, and Eliana is of Latin descent. So, why am I naming this? Because oftentimes in brown spaces, the way we often communicate things is just more safer when we're we're being marginalized by the world around us. If we're not safe, if we have to work extra hard just to survive, then our emotions, there's a lot of protection around our emotions oftentimes. And that's what I'm just seeing, a lot of laughter, a lot of sarcasm. And so she highlighted that, yes, you saying you can do better is not having a good effect on Mitch. Like, it's not having a good impact. The impact is actually bad. Well, she's like, I'm not trying to. More laughter. So I wonder, like, what is that laughter protecting? We don't get to know, but I'm wondering if it's like, what is it? What is it protecting? If is it the impact of like, oh, I'm having a bad impact on my spouse or my partner, and I feel bad about that. Um, what's there? Laughter is usually protecting very vulnerable space, but the therapist's like, but you are. And so Mitch further explains, he's like, all of the examples that you've used today, you've communicated it in that way. And Eliana is like, I have an expectation for you to be the adult in the room when I'm not around. And so Orna kind of paused her, because even using that language, being the adult in the room when I'm not around, I don't feel like Eliana knows the impact of that on Mitch in the moment. And we even see that later on in the communication that she really doesn't. So the therapist switches things. She's like, okay, we're talking about the method. Okay, the method in which you're trying to get the results. But let's talk about the results. What do you want this end result to be? What is your, she's like, for things to get done, for everything to get done. And the therapist like, well, let's compromise the important things to get done. And Orna's saying, well, right now what you're communicating is like, I do it better. I do it better than you, and that's not working. And she's like, well, I'm not saying that explicitly. She's like, but it is, we are all hearing it. And I like that language of like, you may not be saying it directly or explicitly, and at the same time, that's what is being heard. Like, that is the subtext to the text that's here. And so Eliana's like, okay, all right, so tell me how to get my results. Like, tell me what. And so she's like, Mitch, take it away. And Mitch just said, hey, if you ask me, you know, hey, can you watch him while you brush your teeth? All you need to do is, if you let him hold the electric toothbrush, he'll play with it, and I'll occupy him while you brush your teeth. And I'll do it. And so the therapist used like this, really used the empathy and understanding as a bridge to Eliana in the moment, in this way of protection. And that's really helpful. Like, she's being the energy in the room that's trying to build the bridge to connect them. And so she's like, okay, I understand. I understand you're frustrated and that you need help. And she's saying that you've also developed this rhetoric, this idea that you can do it better, and that Mitch isn't functioning as an adult. And that's not working. And how can we reframe it? Especially with the dynamic that she named earlier of, you have the need and then he's responding to the need or the want. Then she kind of shifts focus to Mitch, and the places where I am curious again is to like, why this protection's here. I feel like that's the missing link. And because I feel like there's a valid reason why the protection is there. It may be about Mitch, it may be historical information, but I think it will help Mitch to also be able to connect to Eliana in those moments of understanding why this one that's frustrated, that can use this language, like, because she's human and it may show up again. And it's not that Eliana is doing this intentionally, but it happens. And similarly, for Mitch, like, can we get curious about this separation? And then of like, why is this separation comfortable? It feels like it's comfortable for him to not feel included. There's like some level of comfort, and there is a hesitancy to join with Eliana. You get to learn a little bit about that as Orna asks Mitch, like, okay, tell me, what do you want? Like, what do you want? And he's like, well, I really don't have any huge expectations for myself, other than like raising him to be a good person. He said that the age he is now is just best for his mother to be the one that's like raising him up, and that he's going to step in when he gets older to guide him. And Orna asks, like, so around what age? He's like, well, around like middle school, high school. And so then Orna asks Eliana, like, so tell me, how do you feel about that? And she said, well, in order to have that relationship in middle school, high school, you need to be building a foundation like your son needs you every day right now. And so Mitch then named the belief that he holds that like raising a kid, especially this young age, is the woman's domain. Okay? And so that's a belief. That is a belief he's holding. It's also impacting his behavior and how he shows up in this relationship. Okay? And the face that Eliana made was like, what in the, like, there was a face like that she made, and I wonder what that face was saying. I wonder, like, she's like, oh, this is why I'm feeling so frustrated, because you have this perception that I'm supposed to be doing the heavy lifting right now. I am in the lead right now, and really, no, I need a partner right now. And so he described his relationship with his father after his parents separated. He said when he was 12 years old that his dad was absent and he had to really like guide and lead, figure out things himself. And so he's really focused on making sure he can be that guide for his son at that age. And he's focusing on being what he didn't get, which is very common. And at the same time, I still see this 12-year-old boy still trying to figure things out, even in the now. I wonder what this 12-year-old boy needs, as he seems like he's still trying to figure out how to be a father in the now. And Orna stated that she feels like because he's focused on the later years, that he maybe hasn't really paid attention to, or maybe not be fully aware of, like his dad's presence and his role that he played in his life early on, which could be leading to a lot of things that he may not be fully like attending to. Because if we attend to the connection that he may or may not have had, like if he had a great connection with his dad that was ruptured by the separation and his dad just left, then that's like grief and pain that may not have been fully attended to, and that may be hurt that's there. That's been like that the layer of protection, right, has been on. Mitch also named that he isn't really aware of the impact that he's having on his son's life right now, which is something for Mitch to get curious about. I see Mitch showing up as a supporting role in his son's life, and my concern, or what I wonder, is like what's going to happen at when his son turns 12. Like he's because he feels like this magic shift is going to happen, but I don't sense that it will unless Mitch maybe attends to his 12-year-old that's happening, or that's still here, that's still like seems like very much present in the relationship. And at the same time, I also see where Mitch does have a part of him that is wanting to be more present, for his son. And so Eliana, at the end of the session, said, "Hey, would you like to try and come over and stay over a few more days?" And he said, "Yeah." But even in that ask, I hear like, "Okay, would you like to have more time to have an impact on your son's life?" Yes. But I also hear from Mitch that he doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't know maybe what he needs to do in order to build a relationship with his son, like what that looks like. Like I feel like he is navigating territory that's unfamiliar to him. So they're pausing and they said like this would be a good place for them to revisit, but it should be really interesting, or will be really interesting, to see how this dynamic continues to play out in their relationship, and what shifts can happen to highlight both, like all the needs happening in the room, the son, Eliana's, and Mitch's. And I wonder if Mitch really even knows what his needs are. We shall see. Last, we have Alexis and Casimir. And so we start kind of like in the middle of a sentence, almost in the middle of their session, where Alexis is saying, "Yeah, most people love Tallulah." And the therapist is like, "Who is Tallulah?" And so Casimir explains that they identify as Two Spirit. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Two Spirit, and a lot of indigenous spaces could be with those who are either in like Native Hawaiian culture, uh, there's Native, like even Hispanic culture, as Casimir is Puerto Rican, and even in Native, talking about Native American culture, that oftentimes people who identified as Two Spirit. So, if you are not familiar with the term Two Spirits, I will have a link in the description where you can learn just some few common like misconceptions about Two Spirit people, and also the historical facts connected to the history of people who identify as Two Spirit, But in indigenous spaces, two spirit people were seen as spiritual leaders in the community and also a guide for children and youth, as they were both holding the feminine and masculine energy and had really key responsibilities in the community. And Casimir is saying that's what they noticed about them. And the therapist asked more about that, of like when they felt this other, like Tallulah, when did she emerge? And and Casimir was like, she was always there. Like she was always there. And so the therapist named, Orna named, like, okay, so I want to bring forth, like, you both are naming that you're two really complex beings. Like you have these two spirits here internally for you, and Alexis, you dissociate. Okay. And so I wonder, like, there is a look on Alexis' face oftentimes when his dissociation is named. And so I don't know if that look was around her naming this, like, this dynamic that's happening in the relationship, or again because of any feelings that Alexis may have around the dissociation. Okay. And oftentimes, like, things that we're doing for survival, internally there are parts of us that don't like the fact that we do that. So like that's what I'm sensing, but it could also be like, whoa, because Casimir was like mind blown about like the clarity of naming that out loud, and how there are a lot of parts of them that are trying to be understood, and also parts of them that are maybe like clashing with each other. And Orna, when she was with her group consultation, she talked about how she's like, oh, I felt this other presence in the room, and I'm so glad that Casimir named her. It's like, Tallulah, like you're here. And and it's, you can sense the energy, whether the person identifies as two spirit, or even the different energies that we just carry internally, the protective energies. Like we can sense it there's a shift that happens. And they do like a little view of her, Orna, in her consultation group, and then back to the therapy session. Casimir explained that other kids would call them Gacy, and they asked the teacher, like, hey, can you call me by my legal name, Casimir? And then there was a shift that they noticed of like this energy of Casimir as this protector, this defender, this wordsmith that would come in to protect and help 10-year-old Casimir, who was homeless, they said. And so Casimir's realizing that this energy is in their relationship. It's showing up in a way that isn't getting them the results that they want. And Alexis even named, like, yeah, so we both have these protective energies, and the protective energies are only concerned about us. They're not really concerned about the relationship or protecting the relationship. And I'll say, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It's like, it's more of the risk of what could happen to them is greater. It's greater than the relationship. Like they care about the relationship, but it's like, but that other thing can't happen again. Like that thing that happened before, when we were 10, when we were 12, when we were 9, that can't happen again. Like absolutely not. And so that's what causes the tension, and oftentimes the clashing, the protection clash, because our protectors only know how to do what they learned how to do. Okay, so Orna asks more about the history of Alexis and his trauma. And so he shared some pretty heartbreaking things. One, that he was raised by his mother, and his sister. And he was parenting his sister and also himself. And around 9, his mother's uncle's partner started to engage in very inappropriate behavior uh, and continued to do so for a long period of time. And so around that time was when Alexis started to notice that they were dissociating and also engaging in self-harm. And the therapist's response, Orna's response, was like, "Did you try to get help?" And a part of me said, "Eek," when she asked that. Um, I I'm hearing the intent of that question, and I'm wondering what was happening for her when she heard that, and she kind of named that a little bit later on in this session, or later on in the episode, I should say. And you could see like this part of her was like trying to stop this 9-year-old from being harmed. Like, did you ask? Did you tell somebody? What did you do? Like, or did you have like did you have an outlet? And so Alexis said it wasn't until 2 years later, around 11. So I'm like 2 years of enduring this. This aunt from Florida saw the change, saw Alexis was different, saw it wasn't the same, and mom said something to her sister, and sister got cut off, and nothing happened, nothing changed. Now he stopped going over his uncle's house, but the uncle would come to his house, and it would happen there. And mom was around in the room when this, or in the next room when this was occurring, or in the bedroom or the hallway. And mom was also physically harming Alexis. And Orna said, like, no, there was nowhere to go. And I said, yeah. And that's why this one that dissociates had to come in to take him away. Like, had to take him out of this reality, because this reality is too painful. It's just too painful. And so Alexis talked about how he had no control, right? No control of what was happening in the home. And that's where the self-harm was helpful, because he was at least in control of that pain. I can manage this. And he left the house at 16 years old. He talked about severing the relationship with his mother, how that was extremely difficult, and how they really don't see each other that much. But at times when family gatherings happened, there was a wedding, and Casimir said that they met Alexis' mother, and she said, he's just not well. He's making all of this up in his head. Let's talk about the impact of a denial protector. Like, mom's denial protector is up, and the impact of that is completely ignoring years and years and years and years and years and years of the pain that Alexis experienced. And so Alexis said, hey, once I got this control over my life, I wasn't letting go of it. And I became very ambitious. I felt like I had to prove that I wasn't broken. So I wanna learn more, right? I feel like Alexis is saying so much in this sentence, or in this statement, of like, I once I had control over my life, I wasn't letting go of it. Oh yeah, so how do you maintain control of your life? Because that can start to help us to know like what protectors are around. And it feels like anger is one of those ways that he controls things in his life. Being very ambitious. So, what does that look like? There's a part of him that's carrying the belief that he's broken, because there's also one that's like working really hard to disprove that. And what does that look like? What does that feel like internally? Like, whew, right? Orna did really praise Alexis for the work that he's done to really, from 16 till now, take care of himself with really limited resources. Extremely limited resources. And Casimir even named like, hey, I'm so proud of you and how you've built your life. And Alexis was just like in awe to hear that. It's like it's so weird to hear that, because it's like how I imagine. I don't know what Alexis is feeling because he didn't say, but it's like how can you be proud of something I felt like I had to do, or I was gonna what, like, perish. So it's, yeah, it could be a hard statement because that's more about Casimar's view of what, even though it's a beautiful statement to be proud of Alexis, and still, like, Alexis was like, I had no choice but to do these things. I still have no choice because I can't go back there. And so Orna named with her consultant what's being activated inside of her with Casimir and Alexis. That these young children, this 10-year-old that's homeless, this 9-year-old who needs help, that it's activating a part of her that's feeling like she needs to rescue them and go get them, go get those little kids in there. And that's something for Orna to get curious about. I think it's a beautiful way that they're kind of talking about the work this season, especially starting with the baby pictures and like what I named last week of like, yeah, Orna has parts just like we all do, and I have parts, and parts get therapists, parts get activated, and so it's like, what can Orna do? It's a beautiful noticing that she's like, I'm trying to save these children, and there are two adults here that can really help these children and be there for these children, witness these children, attune to their needs in a way that Orna can't. And so, because they have the lived experience, right? They were there. So it's a beautiful noticing, and even a beautiful gift for her to be vulnerable in naming that too, because that's a beautiful thing. Oftentimes the people do see sometimes therapists as like superhumans, and we are not. We are not. So let me know what you're seeing with the three couples. We just had three couples this episode, and your thoughts. If you are still with us, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, be cool, be calm, be centered.